So, welcome Elaine to the Maestro Online.
Hello, nice to be here.
Hello. Oh, it's great to have you. So, I thought we'd start by talking a bit about your journey. So, you've got what sounds like an idyllic start to life because of your watermill, Yorkshire, countryside beginnings.
Yeah, I mean, I was brought up in a very rural area, which is very beautiful, and still is. So it was really lovely to be able to like blossom as a child, to be free in nature and that kind of thing. I think it's had quite a deep rooted impact on who I am as a person, really.
Yeah, do you
Um,
think that's affected your songwriting in the long term?
yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the a lot of the lyrics that I write very heavily influenced by the landscape that I'm in,
Mm.
wherever that may be. There's always references to the land and the earth and things like that within my work. It's just something that I've always done. Really, it's not necessarily massively conscious that
So, do you
decision.
think do you think that subconsciously then the visual links to the music and that
Yeah,
there's a
definitely.
connection between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true of a lot of songwriters, really, because and even songwriting styles and genres. I think that obviously a lot of kind of dance music's very urban. Not always, but its roots are from very urban kind of environments. A lot of folk and country music is very much from kind of rural environments. It's just the history of it, not necessarily. It's not the law. Do you know what I mean? But I think
Yeah,
it does tend to lend itself to those kind of genres and the history of those genres too. So
gives you
yeah, it was.
inspiration for storytelling. But
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
also the other way, isn't there? There's lots of studies recently in synthesia, the idea that music, or particular music, gives you a particular color or particular image when you hear it.
Yeah, and you see that in education now, don't you? Like where there's lots of workshops and lots of kind of ideas of children drawing what they're hearing. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yes.
art forms are so very much connected, and in our minds, obviously, there's lots of connections happening. So certain certain songs make you feel a certain way, and music makes you feel emotions. And emotions are very much linked to visuals and colours and textures, and so I think it's entwined too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going back to your journey. So 2017, looking back, seems to be your beginning of some really big success with getting in the top 10 on the indie charts, with having Bob Harris play things, and with in 2017 British Airways playing your songs worldwide. That must have been an amazing experience.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, like since I was just a kid, really. So I think what happens is the process has like certain milestones as it moves along, um, and if because you're always on that journey, uh, it, those kind of milestones keep moving with it as well. So
Yes.
it's great. You've got to almost got to remember to stop and smell the roses and realize what you've achieved each year or each couple of years or because it almost feels like you're always like ahead and onto the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
2017, I guess it was the release that was out at the time. It just did really well, and I did lots of good touring, and the songs were strong that I was releasing throughout that year, and
Yeah.
had a good publisher. So yeah, quite a few things clicked nicely into place. But yeah, each record that I make really tends to come with a different story and different achievements.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, and of course with your style of songwriting, and in fact any good style of decent songwriting, storytelling is at the core of that.
yeah, definitely for me, I'd say that my songwriting and the story, the lyrics, the voice is really, really strong and rich throughout everything I do. To
Yeah,
be honest,
yeah, and
it's very much
and
central.
yes, And then when you hit things like Glastonbury and sharing stages with David Gray and playing with Paolo Nutini and Katie Tunstall, those must have been not just amazing experiences, but as in milestones, but they must be experiences that gain um, skills in terms of your own songwriting and gain inspiration for moving forward, gain new ideas. You must bounce off of the people around you, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. As far as like performance skills go, that's just time and just playing on stages like for years, and also some of the difficult things where things didn't work, or you struggled, or the audience weren't very receptive, or you were just, I mean, some of the big supports that I've played, they sound like, wow, you went on tour with Paolo Nutini. They can be some of the hardest shows because at the end of the day, they're not there to see you. And people are
Yeah.
just milling in and kind of slightly ignoring you.
Yes.
And so they can be, they sound amazing, but I think that really, you've got to have a lot of strength of character to go with those kind of those big shows, and a lot of focus in on your own music, and you believe in the sound that you're making. But I think for me, some of my favourite moments of live performance have actually come with the very intimate shows, the very
Yes.
small, wonderful venues that are all over the country. Them really the much smaller capacity rooms that where you feel more connected with the audience, and so as I think they're wonderful. I love playing them. I get a lot out of them. I really do. But as far as touring with other artists and performing with other artists and playing festivals and even being in the audience watching other artists and very much recording with other artists as well is a huge learning. It's a constant learning experience, and it is inspirational because you can get in a bit of a rut with your own work where you just you don't want to just produce the same thing over and over and over
Yeah.
again. And
Yeah.
I think that creative interaction with other artists is really inspiring, and it definitely educates you, but it also cleanses your palate as a musician, I think, too.
So what about your musical training? Have you largely been self-taught or did
Yeah,
things happen as you grew up?
well, a little bit, but mostly self-taught. When I was very young, I did some piano lessons, and it came about from me badgering my mum. My nana had this old organ in her house, and I used to play. I didn't know what I was playing. I just made little tunes up from very early age, and I really loved it. And I would pester my mum to get some piano lessons. And finally, when I was 8, I did a couple of years piano lessons at school, like paid for or whatever. And I loved it. I loved it so much. And I think that very much started me on the journey of just understanding harmony and chord shapes, really basic,
Yeah.
and how the melody sits onto it, and how you can layer things and counter melodies. And just really the very much, like I said, the basics of musical harmony. And so I just started writing songs with chords and little simple melodies, or I started writing on the piano, really. And then after that, I taught myself the guitar again, just listening to the singer-songwriters that I loved back then, and
I
almost
imagine
like
Joni
making.
Mitchell.
Yeah, I mean, I love Joni Mitchell, but in a way, I didn't get into her till much later. When I was
Right.
a kid, it was things like the music that was out when I was a kid, like when maybe not much as a kid, but like a teenager, was very much Britpop bands. So it was like Blur
Yeah.
and Oasis and guitar bands. And that's when I started playing guitar and getting into kind of writing and strumming songs on the guitar.
Yeah.
And I was about 16, 15, 16 at that point. So I
So
didn't learn.
when you
Yeah,
had piano lessons, were you one of those that didn't really want to stick to notation and learn notation? You heard sounds and you wanted to make it your way, and you were more a creative spirit than a reproduced notation kind of spirit.
yeah, I think I always saw music as a vehicle to create, to
Yeah.
compose, to write. I never really was going to be I don't think I was ever really going to be technically going down the road of, yeah, just sticking to the dots. I think
Yeah.
I always saw it as a way of writing songs, even from a tiny, even from 8. I was just always writing little songs. It
That's
was just
great.
very natural for me, yeah. And music was the vehicle to do that with, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and listening to your vocals, I mean, I can hear various things. Like I was listening to just one and Matters of the Heart. There's some nice pitch bends coming from underneath and some quite resonant low tones in your voice. And then on other things, I can hear Blackened Heart, Words of Honey on My Lips. They asked for it on set. I can hear quite a lot of vocal detail to how you start notes, where you put the melodic falls and the pitch bends and all that kind of thing. Is that something from listening to other artists or anybody in particular, or just something you've
Do you know,
developed?
quite a few people have asked me this, that say you have a very stylized way of singing. But
Hmm.
a lot of people who know me say I have a relatively stylized way of speaking too. And I emphasize
Okay.
and shut words up and say things like quite expressively. And I have a very deep kind of husky voice naturally, to be honest. So I think the truth is, you get inspired by like all the artists that you admire when you're young or you're first setting out on that journey, and you might mimic them a little bit, or like, but then at the point I'm at now, I think I've really found my own voice. And I think
Yeah.
the voice that I have and that I deliver my songs in, it's completely just, I don't consciously try and overthink any of it.
No.
It's how I would explain it to you in words. That's how I feel. It's very natural. So I think I've got to a point where I've very much discovered like my own honest way of singing now.
And your backing vocals are some of your stronger songs as well. You like those sustained harmonies when you come to the powerful bits, with a note change per bar kind of thing. Is that something you hear in your head while you're songwriting, or is that something that develops as you polish the song?
I tend to do that afterwards. So yeah, I've written the song. I tend to start the song. Well, I always start the song, not tend to. I always start the song with just strumming a few chords or a little finger picking around the chord sequence, or the same on the piano. And then once I've got my little riff or my little chord sequence, the words come really quickly. Again, like a conversation, I don't spend a massive amount of time with the words, which is strange because they're the most poignant part, really.
Yes.
They flow very easily for me, the words. And then after that, I've got my chord sequence and my words. I'm strumming along, singing the tunes, just coming out like how quite easily how I feel I want it to move. And then anything like harmonies will come afterwards, like any instrumentation, decoration, and melodies. They'll come afterwards, like the cake as it gets layered.
Yeah. Well, actually, thinking about instrumentation, or you might even call it orchestration. Let Me Fall. You play, I think it's a acoustic rhythm pattern, isn't it? And then there's an electric coming in on every bar, and that mixture of acoustic and electric is really effective.
Well, Let Me Fall, the one you've heard, because this next one isn't out yet. Let Me Fall is quite a strong song, and we've revisited that song for this new record that's coming out in May. When I went out to San Diego in September to work with Mike Butler on this new album, and Mike really liked that song, Let Me Fall, and he wanted to rework it while we were there and put a version of it on this new album. So this new record, which is called Half Moon Rising, which is going to be out in
Yeah.
May 17th, there is a version of Let Me Fall, but it's called Let Me Fall Revisited, because that's very much what happens on this new version and throughout this new record. There's very much mixing of like those beautiful country electric guitars, which are soft and warm, but also give a little bit of power and fire at times. And they're merging on like throughout the record. And there's quite a bit of pedal steel throughout this new album too.
Mm.
So that instrumentation is very much that juxtaposition of the sweet with a bit of the kick from the electrics as well.
And well, we should explain to anybody watching that that Mike is quite an experienced producer with people like Nora Jones and
Yeah, I mean
various
he's
others.
yeah, I mean really he's a mix engineer. He worked in a really iconic studio in LA for years called Record Plant, where he cut his teeth there really as an engineer for years, learning under some really, really incredible producers and mix engineers and, recording engineers. So he has now set up his own studio where he lives in San Diego, and he is recording various artists, but a lot of his history comes from mixing and engineering records. So
So
so yeah,
is that what he brought to the track? His experience of the mixing, his experience of
everything. Yeah, it was incredible. He's one of those multi-talented people who really is almost like a one-stop shop. It was amazing. So I recorded everything with him, and he pulled in lots of musicians that he works with in San Diego, and they were just incredible. We'd already discussed all of this and liaised with all of this before, before the record, and there's certain people that were going to be on it, and they've all been on some incredible albums too, and worked with really wonderful musicians. I mean, the violinist toured with Leonard Cohen for years. I
yeah,
mean, they're
yeah,
absolutely on a different level, these people.
yes.
So they were almost masters of their own art too, and he'd worked with them on various stages, and he suggested them for this record because we discussed we wanted that alt country Americana feel to really shine through, but only texturing, nothing too overpowering, and so it's together we created how the vision of the songs. And Mike was very much at the center of that.
Yeah. So that's absolutely brilliant. What do you feel then, looking forward to the 17th of May? What do you feel this album then does maybe that the previous albums haven't, or you yourself in the position with your own voice and your own storytelling and singing? How do you feel it's your new milestone is probably a stepping stone to the next milestone?
Yeah, I think this is one of the best records I've ever made. I know that's quite bold, but I really do. It feels like every element of this record is right for me. So I think the songs are the strongest I've ever written. Even just the core of the song craft, I think, is the best I've ever done. They're very honest. They gel lovely together, like a story. The inspiration for the record is very much about moving forward and the new kind of beginnings as well, which has this quite deep but uplifting feel to the record. Where a lot of my previous records, I'm very reflective, so I tend to look back a lot, and that's just like
Mm,
me because I'm quite a philosophical person. But this
yes.
one feels like it's very much about looking forward and the rising of, like, obviously it's Half Moon Rising, the rising of new beginnings and new chapters. So as actual a body of songs, I feel they're very strong. And also the instrumentation is just absolutely exceptional. The people that worked on this album, I've never worked with people of this caliber before. So
Yeah.
that level is just out of this world for me. And then working with Mike and the level that he's worked at on some of the best records I've ever heard. I mean, I've never had the opportunity to work with anyone of that caliber either. So, and also the feel of the record really, really really, it's got a great story. I flew out to San Diego. We recorded in this beautiful wooden lodge on the hills and in the woods, and the whole experience of the record, you can hear it. It's in there. So it
Yeah.
feels like a very special album to me. It's more so
Yes.
than the others.
So the uplifting looking forward, is that from something particular personal, or do you think it's the world coming? You've come out of COVID. The whole world now is not looking back; it's looking forward. How do we move forward? How do we grow forward? And people feel that sense of almost freedom.
I think it's both. I think, like I said, I tend to write about my own experiences, But it's not just the songs aren't what's necessarily happened to me. They're my own experiences, how I've interpreted what I see and what I witness as well. So in the songs, I doesn't always mean I. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's something that I'm experiencing through what I'm seeing in other people. But I think it's both. I think it's a case of feeling. I feel quite like strong now. I feel like healed and strong, and I don't know how to explain it. It's like I feel like I've got a lot of energy to work harder again. So I think there's an element of rest that's happened, and then I feel like I'm moving forward again. So maybe
Yes.
psychologically it's in there as well, with the whole world shutting down and coming back to life, and so I think it's a bit of everything.
Yeah. That sounds great. So it's got a real forward direction. And obviously you're looking forward to the release, but can you see the next stage? Can you see what's coming next?
Yeah, so there's a single which is Let Me Fall Revisited coming out very quickly, very soon actually. That's coming out on April the 12th. So that's in a couple of weeks. That
Yeah.
single's coming out. So that's already started to receive some airplay, some radio airplay already. And that will come out digitally worldwide. And then the full album, yeah, on May 17th. And we've done a really beautiful limited edition of 100 copies of it on vinyl, and they're in a really beautiful deep red color, and so they will get
Wow.
sold for like collectors, but that's going to be something that you've got to be very quick if you want to order one of them. A lot of that pre-ordering will start in the next week or two, so that's happening. Everything's coming out on CD and digitally as well, and then I'm doing quite a lot of shows as well. So I'm doing some shows with this release, and then it's going to be some festivals over the summer, and then I'm programming some more shows for autumn as well. So this whole year really is pretty much moving for this album. And then
Yes.
when it comes to spring, when it comes to the depths of the winter, I'll start writing again.
Yeah.
I mean, I always write, but bits and bobs. But when I like I'm shut away a little bit more, then I'll have a little bit more kind of time
Yeah.
to. And in a way, this journey from this album and everything that I'm busy in doing gives you food for an life experience to
Yes. New
write about.
experiences, new sparks that might spark the imagination and lead you in a different
That's
direction.
right. That's
Who
right.
knows?
Yeah.
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 Because it's very organic, isn't it?
Very much so, especially what I do.
If you had one tip for a younger artist, what would it be?
Play live. Play live as much as you possibly can. I think playing live is the best experience and the most learning curve you can have. And also, you're collecting audiences. You're
Yes.
collecting audiences. Your music's out there. It'll inspire you to write more. You'll be working and meeting and hearing other artists as you go along. So there's so many different elements, that you'll learn from playing live. And also, playing live is just a wonderful thing. The
Yeah.
connections with audiences and people, and it really it really challenges you as a musician to be able to
Yes.
play live in all sorts of different venues with good sound, bad sound. For me, I would say get out and play live as much as you can, and that always leads on to other things.
That's fantastic. Elaine Palmer, thank you very much.
Thank you.